Hello everyone, this is Dilshani from Literary Genius, and this is the fourth video lesson in our ongoing series of Analyzing Life of Pi. And in this video, we are going to talk about the importance of themes in the first part of the novel Toronto and Pondicherry. In the previous video, we talked about the structure of this the first part. If you have read the novel, you will remember that Pi initially struggled a lot with his name, Piscine. Oddly enough, he was named after a French swimming pool by his Mamaji Francis. Unfortunately, his schoolmates started teasing him because of the pun attached to his name. Piscine, as you may already know, is similar to the pronunciation of the word pissing. P-I-S-S-I-N-G. I don't have to explain that to you because you already know. If two words are pronounced in the same way but have different meanings, and if one of those words is used to substitute the other word, inducing humor or sarcasm, we call it a pun. I'm not going deep into explaining puns at this point, but you are more than welcome to search for more examples in the net. Now, why am I talking about his name? Because it is related to a very important theme in the novel, that is identity. Now, identity means who you are, the way you think about yourself, the way you think about others, the way others look at you, and your defining characteristics as a person. So this is the basic definition for identity. So your name is the most basic way of telling who you are, right? And the same goes to Pi. In the first part of the novel, we can see Piscine isn't happy with his name and is trying to redefine himself as Pi. The interesting thing about Pi is that it is a mathematical symbol and it stands for an infinite and irrational number. When you study maths, you will be taught two categories of numbers, one rational and the other irrational. Irrational because it's infinite, you can't finish that number. For example, Pi stands for the infinite number of 3.1415926, and it goes on and on, it doesn't end. So interestingly, this symbol has a strong affinity with our protagonist Pi. His life story as revealed in the novel is equally rational, but this irrationality is not something negative. It actually has a positive effect. We talked about imagination and fantasy and how they affect us, right? Irrationality stands for things we consider illogical and unjustifiable, like spending 227 days with a Bengal tiger in the same lifeboat and coming across floating carnivorous islands. They do sound kind of irrational. The non-linear structure of the narrative, as we discussed in the previous video, does sound irrational, but we are not here to argue that these things are rational, real. We are here to argue that the author is trying to make us reconsider one aspect to which we fail to give due credits all this time. He is forcing us to look at that aspect. And what is this? It is imagination, like I mentioned at an earlier point. You can find quotations related to this theme, identity, in the fifth chapter, chapter 5. Now, let us pull back all these strands together. What we talked about, now we talked about two literary elements, right? That they are connected according to this explanation. These are Pi's identity and the nature of the narrative. We already talked about identity, and we also talked about the narrative being considered irrational, and we will look at the reasons why do we call it irrational. Because the boundaries between fiction and reality are blurred, they are not clear. That is why we call it irrational. For example, the confusing narrative voices. Who is this anonymous author? Whose voice is this? Jan Martel? Not really, but we can't say it is not Jan Martel at the same time. The segmentation of the chapters into two voices with varying lengths and a lack of linearity and a lot of fantastical elements. Simply, a lot of instances of merging fiction and reality. And why is Martel doing all this? To make the readers reconsider the importance of imagination. Okay, the second theme I'm going to talk about is relationships. The first theme we talked about was identity, and we talked about imagination as well. And the next theme I want to highlight is relationships. Relationship between Pi and animals. If you read the novel, you have already done, I'm sure. Pi's father owns a zoo, and Pi gets a lot of exposure into the lives of these wild animals surrounding him, and he has a deep understanding about animals. So the first section of the novel is important to highlight Pi's potential to survive with a wild animal like a tiger in a lifeboat. This adds a degree of credibility into the narrative. So it's not only fantastical elements alone, it has an element of reality in it. The third theme I want to talk about is religion or faith in God. As you know, Pi practices 3 religions, Hinduism, Christianity and Islam, because he wants to love God in all his forms. And faith in God is one of the things that gave him hope and kept him alive throughout his ordeal at sea, with a Bengal tiger being shipwrecked. So far we discussed 3 predominant themes in relation to the first part of the novel, Toronto and Pondicherry. You can see I have put them in a diagram so you can understand their interconnectivity. Basically, the 3 themes are all connected to this larger theme of survival. I didn't explain survival as a separate theme in this video because we will have an extensive discussion about it in the next video. His identity is formed through his relationship with animals and his faith in God. So these themes are interconnected. And later we see that his identity in both, nourished by both these elements, help him survive the shipwreck. So all these are interconnected. Likewise, try to build up connections between these things you learn. We talked about the structure in our previous video, and now you can see how the structure connects with these themes. Play around a little bit, try out new things, and with that we come to the end of our 4th video. So try building up connections as you go on. I wish you luck and thanks for watching.